Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Deep Cut Dive. We've got my partner in crime for today's episode, Martin Popoff from Canada. I was going to wish you a happy July 4th, Martin, but I know it doesn't really mean the same thing as it does to the folks here in the States, but happy 4th of July to everybody here.
Yes.
I know
we have July 1st, so it's actually close, right?
There you go. And here I am wishing July 4th to everybody, but yet this is not airing till Monday the 6th, so whatever. Yeah. But anyway, so today we're going to take a deep cut dive into Blue Oyster Cult, a band that Martin and I talked about doing a few weeks ago already. And I think it's perfect. This band is perfect for this format. And as I was just telling Martin before we went live on the air, it's like we could probably do a Blue Oyster Cult deep cut dive show every week for like a month or two, and it wouldn't get old. And I'm betting that he and I did not pick any of the same songs here. If we did, I'd be really surprised. But you never know. You never. But Martin is prepared, just in case we did that. He's prepared. He's got some deeper cuts that he can use as fallbacks in case we pick the same one. So, so everybody remember the drill. This is not Don't Fear the Reaper, Godzilla, ETI, Burning for You, Astronomy. It's not the radio hits. It's not the stuff they play live all the time. It's not the stuff from the greatest hits compilations or the classic live albums, all that kind of stuff. These are the songs that are nestled within many of their great albums. You know, this band is pretty good at pulling out deep cuts every now and then, throwing them on a tour and stuff like that. But for the most part, these are songs, hopefully, that the casual BOC fan probably doesn't know. So, and in hopes that you guys who are watching, who maybe only know those handful of popular songs, will go into these catalogs and listen to some of these songs and hopefully discover these great albums, because that's what this is all about, is promoting the music that's a little off the beaten path from these great bands. So I'm going to let Martin kick us off with one of his deep cuts.
Okay, so actually I was going to start with a little show and tell. So
absolutely.
Very quickly, do you remember these, Pete?
Oh, yeah.
This was the 50 cents that you would send in and get all the lyrics to Blue Oyster Cult. You know, back in, I think Specters might have been the first album that had that. Maybe the only album, I can't remember. But I definitely sent in on Specters. You send 50 cents in and they send you computer sheets of all their lyrics. Look at that. Yeah. Just all like really, you know, the old
off of an old, like, with dot matrix printer, right?
Yeah.
I bet you half the people watching don't even know what a dot matrix printer is.
Yeah. And one of the things I started doing is I started making up ads and doing pencil crayon on black and some other things. So here's a BOC ad that I made up. This one is just the album cover with a few different text variations. But I've done probably, I don't know, 30 of these now for different bands. And then some of them are really made up. So here's a Mirrors one using a picture that my buddy shot, Rich Galbraith. So I made a Mirrors ad with that.
That's pretty cool. What kind of paper is that on, Martin?
It's just straight, you know, almost like black construction paper. But I always find I do like the pencil crayon look on black. Yeah. And I learned that from an Inuit artist that I saw a big show of. Inuit artists always do this pencil crayon on white, and I never like it, but then I saw somebody did on black, and I thought it was cool. So here's my first Blue Oyster Cult book. This has been in a couple of editions. So that's basically the story of the band. And then my second Blue Oyster Cult book is this one, which is a big coffee table book, you know, full color throughout, pictures of the band kind of thing, right? So that just came out a couple weeks ago. So I
just have a weird edition because I have one of your other editions of the first book. It's got a different cover on it.
It was called Secrets Revealed. It first came out through Metal Blade in 05 or 03, and then we did a different cover, and I self-published it later. And then this is the edition that's out through Weimer now.
I like the cover on that one much better.
Yeah. So my number 5, I know these are chronological order. These aren't in order. I'm going to make a strong statement here and skip right over the whole black and white period. I have nothing there that I really felt in my heart that I had to point out because I have more than enough, as you say, Pete. I mean, we could do 5 episodes of this, right?
Maybe we will.
yeah. So I'm going to go. So this is a little so. At this point, I'm not actually sure which one I'm going to do, so I'm just going to mention them all quickly. Off of Specters, I was going to talk about Maybe I Love the Night or Nosferatu. I don't know if they fit the definition of deep cut. And this one I'm not sure fits the definition, but this is what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with the title track from this one, Mirrors, right? Now, you know, it's the title track, but it's a deep cut. I mean, no one really knows that song or thinks about that song very much. It's all about, I guess, doctor music and indie and the Vigil, right? So basically, the Mirrors is one of these kind of almost like a pop rocker. Remember, Pete, when we were talking about the Babies, right? We talked about pop rock, right? And it reminds me of a pop rocker. Great Sun Gesture, actually, off of this reminds me of a pop rocker too. Right. Something that Styx would do maybe. And Mirrors is just this kind of stomping but very melodic song. I like the idea that it kind of ties into the Imagino story because of John Dee and the Black Mirror, the Obsidian Mirror, which has parallels to the Led Zeppelin's Presence, the Object, right? In a way, long story. There's a whole Imaginos book going on with the timeline and pictures and all this stuff. I won't go into that. But Mirrors is a little bit, Mirrors kind of feels like an Imagino song, but it isn't. It's sung by Buck. It's about vanity. It's about, girls looking into the mirror and, looking for a better image of themselves. I think Buck draws a parallel to guys as well. But it's just this good, very melodic, super sweet rocker that's still guitars, and it's got female backing vocals, Jamie Rabb and Ellen Foley. Someone else, Wendy Webb, I believe. Yeah, just a cool song. And weirdly, yeah, only Blue Oyster Cult can do stuff like this, but it's a title track and it's still a deep track. So there you go.
No, I agree with you. I think it's a great choice, and I was looking at that one myself. So Martin's not going to go into the black and white era, so to speak. I'm going to touch on a little bit of that and then kind of jump way ahead. So I'm going to start from the very first album for I can never say it. Transmaniacon MC, right? Is that how they say that? It's like the
Transmaniacon.
Transmaniacon. Okay,
I can picture the lyric and when he says it,
the way he says it, yeah.
MC, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it's a very cool song, and again, it's a kick off the album track. So you would think, all right, not very deep, but you know what? A song that gets ignored, I think, quite a bit in there when you look at their catalog. And I really like the rawness of that first album. And this song, to me, when I listen to it, it reminds me of like similar period Steppenwolf with, I hear like a little bit of the Alice Cooper group, like the early Alice Cooper group, right? The riffs, the kind of the attitude of the song, but there's this like kind of like haunting atmosphere that goes through the whole song, which I really like. Eric Bloom's vocals are really raw. It's just a really cool song, and I don't know, I listened to it, I'm like, this would be a great like live staple for them, but was never meant to be, right? For whatever reason. So that's my choice. I know there's some people who absolutely worship the first album, and I totally get that, but I think the casual fan probably doesn't know much from this album. That's why I wanted to pick at least one song from it. You could have thrown a half a dozen out there, but that's my choice for number one, Transmaniacon MC. Good tune. Cool. Check it out if you have it. Yeah,
I just interviewed Joe Bouchard a few days ago for one of these 10 albums that changed my life for Goldmine, and he brought up Alice Cooper Killer. So you're right. I mean, Alice Cooper was a big influence on these guys, as was Black Sabbath, as was probably the Doors. They don't talk about the Doors a lot, but
I agree. Yep.
The Doors are big. But yeah, I like that Steppenwolf reference. I don't hear that too often. That's actually pretty cool. And the Alice Cooper, it makes perfect sense with a song like that. So, all right. So my second choice, I am going to go with, so I have three choices from this album here, Cultosaurus Erectus, right? There's the old monster on there. That's from an old science fiction painting, right? So basically, I have three choices. I consider these all pretty deep. I was thinking Monsters or Hungry Boys, but I'm going to go with Unknown Tongue. Written by David Roeder. This is one, he talks about it in my book, and he gives a great story about how it's all about like a girl getting her period for the first time, and Catholic girls, and David going out with Catholic girls, and this obsession with blood and Catholics and all this. So yeah, Blue Oyster Cult, super deep. I mean, they've got this army of lyricists who do all this really cool stuff all the time, and David Roeder is just another in a line. I mean, Richard Meltzer, Sandy Pearlman, Patti Smith, Helen Wheels. And now we've got David Roeder, just a buddy of the band, and he writes a few pretty cool tunes for this band. So this is one of his really neat lyrics that is obviously very different than the usual rock and roll lyrics, and it's set to one of these musical tracks that's like a dark, mournful, foreboding, but poppy Blue Oyster Cult. So it's heavy, and it's got a little bit of weight, a little bit of doom to it, but it's still poppy, and it's just this good, deep track, just a cool, pretty literary gem, buried on Cultosaurus Erectus.
Martin Birch's production on Cultosaurus Erectus, yay or nay?
Yeah, pretty interesting. I did a whole episode of History in 5 Songs, my podcast, on Martin Birch, and I think I've talked about this album. And what I found pretty interesting is this album and Fire of Unknown Origin and Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell have a really similar sound. And he goes for a lot of mid-range. There's a lot of compression into the middle, and so I find that on this. So no, I'd say nay a little bit, because I'm not crazy about the production. I find it just a little bit too one-dimensional and too much in the middle. There's not enough treble. There's not enough bass. You know, he does a very different job on Black Sabbath Mob Rules, I think. But yeah, Heaven and Hell, it's funny. Heaven and Hell, this one, and some of the Whitesnake that he's done have a similar sort of production. So I'm going with the Tom Werman on Mirrors more so than this.
Gotcha. I will say Cultosaurus Erectus, you know, whether you like the production or not, I think it definitely stands out as a different sounding album for them. Even the nature of the songs is a little bit different, but I mean, the production for me, and again, I kind of like it, but it is really different. If you listen to those couple albums that came before it and some of the ones after it, it kind of like stands out as like, this doesn't really sound like the rest here. For me, not necessarily good or bad. It's just really different. I was just curious because that does come up a lot in conversations about that particular album. So, all right, I'm going to go to Tyranny and Mutation for my next selection, which is going to be Mistress of the Salmon Salt, Quicklime Girl, which I think is a really fun song. It is the full-blown one with the signatures on it. That's the one to have. It's got this kind – I like the kind of 60s keyboards from Alan Lanier on there. It's got like this kind of like – and again, this band was this was a psychedelic band early on, so it's not surprising they still were kind of leading some of those elements there. So I really like the keyboard sounds on there. It's a good varied vocal from Eric on here, catchy chorus. And how about Albert Bouchard's drumming on this song? Really nimble and kind of the grooves are like all over the place. A very cool song. Again, the hardcore fans know this song very, very well. I bet you a good majority of the casual fans have never heard it. It's saved all the way for the end of the album, so it's truly, truly deep, right?
Yeah.
And I think this song kind of gives you a little bit of everything that Blue Oyster Cult were really known for back, especially earlier in their career. You got the hooks, you got the kind of heavy riffing, you got the kind of proggy keyboards, the atmosphere, the little bit of psych elements. This is a perfect example of why this band was so hard to categorize for so many years, because they really didn't fit in any kind of box, but they did it all really, really well.
Yeah. So cool. Love it. Okay. All right. So my number 3, I'm going to go with After Dark from this one, right? We got threw in some ticket stubs and a couple of the right passes for that one. Love this record. And I was telling Pete before we started this was the one I didn't want to switch out if Pete was going to mention it. I told him I was going to switch out some on the fly if he mentioned one. Of course, I don't know what's coming, so maybe that whole strategy doesn't work. But After Dark was one I wasn't going to switch out because I just love this song. It's one of my favorite songs on the album, and obviously it's not one of the big ones on here. Obviously, there's Burning for You and Veteran of the Psychic Wars and Joan Crawford and stuff, right? So what I really like about this song is I love the groove that Albert and Joe, the brothers, get into right off the bat with that high bass single note, as Roger Glover calls them, teenaged eighth notes, right? So that nice high bass, and then Albert's doing almost a little bit of this. It feels a little bit like that ballroom blitz snare work thing to start off the song, and I just love the way that just this hums at a pretty high speed throughout. And then Alan's got, a couple of different synthesizer sounds in there. I always think of Blue Oyster Cult in this period. I sometimes talk about this album as sounding like a cross between Cheap Trick and the Stranglers, because I hear, I hear a lot of cool post-punk synthesizer work on this record, but it's still poppy and it's still heavy and appealing at the same time. So yeah, After Dark, I really like Don't Turn Your Back on this as well. I was going to pick that as a possible deep track, but yeah, and Eric sings it, and there's some really cool phrasing and stuff on it. Yeah, just a cool Stranglers-esque song on this record.
Great song from a terrific album. I absolutely love that album. Yeah, it's probably my second favorite. Secret Treaties has long been my favorite Blue Oyster Cult album, but
That one wins most of the polls. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it top to bottom. I think it's great. So yes, spoiler alert: there are going to be no songs from that particular album on this show from me. Probably not surprising, but my number 3, I'm going to go to the Specters album from '77. This bad boy right here. I'm going to go with one that Martin mentioned earlier, Nosferatu. You know, I have a love affair with all things horror and vampires and all that kind of stuff. So for me, this is a very cool song. But again, a song that does not get picked or mentioned much from people. It's creepy. It really captures the vibe of the lyric, I think. You got that ominous mellotron kind of floating around in the beginning of the song, which adds to the kind of eerie, feel of the whole song. Joe Bouchard, great vocal on this. Kind of sounds like Buck a little bit. It's amazing how at times those guys sound very similar.
Yeah.
You got there just those Blue Oyster Cult classy melodies all throughout the song. You got that middle section is great with that muscular riffing coming in, that barnstorming part in the middle. I just think, again, this song embodies so much that was so good about Blue Oyster Cult. They could just kind of jump from one kind of genre to the other right within the same song. They captured the feel of the lyric. Like I said, it feels like a horror film soundtrack song. And I just love it. I think it's really, really good. And an underrated album. I think this is one of those albums I think that I'm loving more and more as time goes on. I've always really liked it, but underappreciated, I think.
Yeah, to me, it's Specters and Mirrors are probably my favorite, maybe followed by Cultosaurus and maybe Fire in there, but Nosferatu, yeah, great, well put, proggy song, great horror song, just and a little bit different arrangement for them. Kind of, it sounds like it's written heavy, but not recorded so heavy. One of those kind. Yeah. So
a lot of songs like that. Actually, they had a lot of songs that actually the lyrical concepts, and you listen to it, you're like, oh, I'm surprised this isn't heavier. Even though it comes across as heavy, it's not like riff, metal heavy, really.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I had to regretfully skip by. I was gonna pick possibly Dragon Lady from Revolution by Night. I was going to maybe talk about White Flags from Club Ninja, but I'm going to go way forward for my 4th of 5 choices and pick Hammerback from this one, Heaven Forbid. Hammerback is like, so the big ones on this album are probably, See You in Black, amazing early song, first song on it, super heavy. Harvest Moon is considered the best written song on the album, right? Power Underneath Despair came out on the Summer Days thing, so we heard, or no, Bad Channels, one of those anyway. So it's one of these where everybody was thirsting for a new Blue Oyster Cult album. It was taking years and years and years, and it was one of these songs that came out early. But so the rest of the album, I Live For Me is also considered one of the well-written songs on the record, right? One of the better songs. But Hammerback is definitely a deep track on this. What I like about it is it's quite heavy. It's a pretty really heavy one of theirs, but it's one of these that's heavy, but also kind of has kind of a humorous party vibe to the music as well.
It's very playful. It's very playful.
Exactly. And I often think of Dr. Music a little bit that way. They have these songs that are heavy, but sound like, drinking songs too, right? But the other really cool thing about Hammerback is there's tons of guitar soloing on this, and Buck comes back, a few times soloing, and there's licks kind of throughout. But go and listen to this song and hear the second solo, which is about 2/3 of the way through or whatever. It's a long solo by Buck, but it's really carnal, and he's low down the fretboard and stuff, and he's really articulating and digging in, kind of like a Zakk Wylde a little bit, right? So it's really, all the soloing is very, very, very Buck-like. So it's very fluid. But at this point, it's like carnal and fluid at the same time. So like super aggressive. So yeah, I think it's possibly my favorite Blue Oyster Cult guitar solo. I mean, I'm kind of bull crapping here a little, because you can never picture every guitar solo, right? But I just know that it's a really, really, really good high. It would be high up my list if I took the 10 hours to go check out all the solos and compare them all. So there's a show idea for you.
That's right. Hey, we might want to do that. We could do lots of show ideas off of Blue Oyster Cult.
That'd be crazy.
I'm sure the viewers would love it.
I've found, people have proposed to me before, like writing books on, ranking guitar solos and stuff. And I've actually even tried it, but I find, you really run out of being able to talk about guitar solos really fast. So I think you would find that it's very frustrating. It's hard to describe. It's a very short piece of work of art, right?
Yeah.
It's 10 or 20 seconds or whatever. So it's kind of stupid to try to describe. So there you go. Hammerback.
Well, we almost had a match there, because actually that song was in my original 5, and I pulled it out at the last minute because I just said, you know what? I'm going to give some love to the much maligned Club Ninja on this show today, because so many people either say they don't like it or never listen to it. So I said, you know what? I'm going to pull out the Heaven Forbid song. All right. But I think it's a terrific song, and that Heaven Forbid album is so heavy. But there's Club Ninja. Here's Club Ninja again. So the song is actually Madness to the Method. Which is a big, one of the things I like about this song is I have like a little soft spot for like early mid 80s prog rock, which again, prog was not very prominent in the 80s, right? But the prog music has like big melodies and hooks and lots of symphonic keyboards and all that kind of stuff. And I think, this is a lengthy track. The production on this album is very airy and atmospheric. I hear a little bit of Rush, similar period Rush on this particular song. Cool. In kind of the way the guitars are recorded. You got the kind of the synths bubbling around there. There's nice piano here. Really good Buck Dharma vocal on this particular song. Layers of big backing vocals and a absolutely killer guitar solo to finish it all out. So very proggy again. And I'm guilty as anybody else is with not liking this song for a good long time. When this album, when this album first came out, I kind of shit on it just like everybody else did, but it grew on me. It's still one of their weaker albums, yes. Yeah. But there's actually some good songs on there, and I think Madness to the Method is a terrific song. One of a couple I think that are really, really good. So that's my choice for number 4.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, like I said, I was going to go with White Flags from that, and I even went and played the old original. There's a Canadian band called Legat who had a double album called, I think it's Illuminations, right? Illuminations? Legat Illuminations. So anyways, the first song on that double album is White Flags. So they wrote it. And it's actually done very, very similar to the Blue Oyster Cult version. It's a couple of minutes longer. But yeah, so that's a cover and a really cool, moody one on that record that I really like. Yeah. Okay, so my last choice, I'm going to go with Eye of the Hurricane from this one, from their very last album. They do have a new album coming. It's going to be called The Symbol Remains, right? So Eye of the Hurricane on this. So, basically this album was semi-ignored and there's not really any hits on it. I'm looking at the track listing in front of me now. I mean, basically you could have picked anything on here and called it a deep track because no one really knows anything about any of these songs.
Which is a shame.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good album. I like Heaven Forbid a little better. It's a little more, I consider it one of these peaks and valleys albums versus, so everything on Curse of the Hidden Mirror is sort of a 7 to me. And Heaven Forbid's got like a few 8s, 9s, and 10s, and then a few 4s and 5s kind of thing for me.
Neither albums, they sound totally different from each other.
It's
Heaven Forbid, it's almost like they were really going for that kind of heavy sound, like a little more. It's more metal certainly than this album, which this is more of a classic rock album, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. Everything's kind of, there's nothing super heavy on it. But Eye of the Hurricane is one of the heavier ones on it. I do really like that it's got that sort of maybe synclavier possible sort of keyboard line. I mean, I'm not sure if that's exactly what it'd be, but it's got this kind of a cashmere riff that's played on something that sounds synclavier-ish. But it's a heavy tune. It's sung by Eric, and I think Eric does a beautiful job of the vocals on here and really, really cool vocal phrasing on it. There's some little fast sections and things. And it's got, just before, there's not really a chorus on it, but it just, because it just goes, Eye of the Hurricane. But there's kind of a pre-chorus to it that has one of these cool little kind of reggae feels. Heavy but reggae just before they do that, which I thought fit really cool in it. So yeah, just a really cool heavy one, late in the track sequence as well on this record. So there you go.
Cool. Well, my number 5 is also from the same album. Okay. And I picked the only other heavy song on the album, One Step Ahead of the Devil from Curse of the Hidden Mirror.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Right? I mean, both of those, they're the only real heavy songs on the album. And I love, this song is probably as close as they're going to get, and Martin's choice as well, to metal on this album, because the rest of the album is much, much more kind of sedate and easier listening. Still good. I love Buck's big, fat, snarling guitar riff on this. It's just there's loads of guitar in this song. Again, which we've seen on their last couple of albums, those big backing vocals, big and rich, you got all the guys singing there. And I love and I'm assuming it sounds like Hammond organ to me. roaring in the background, which gives it kind of almost like a little Deep Purple Uriah Heep feel in spots, which I think is kind of cool. And that's like, I almost wish we got more of that from Blue Oyster Cult at the time. They didn't really, you know, I think they tried not to do that because that was like a big thing with obviously the other two bands I spoke about, but it really works on this song. And that's my choice for number 5. But you're right, could have picked any song from this album because they're all deep. It was totally ignored, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Hopefully the new one doesn't get ignored, but I think, you know what, I think people have waited so long for this that hardcore fans will go out and buy the new one. Hopefully.
Yeah. And they've been whetting the appetite with all these archival live albums that they put.
Like every week one's coming out. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know, it's weird. And some of them aren't so great. I mean, some of them, when this band is on, like they've got a lot of chemistry going, but you know, it can be a little weak vocally, I suppose, here and there. And some of the songs I find that are really heavy songs are played a little too casually. Like they're played a little too loosey-goosey in rock and roll as well. But generally speaking, and some of them are incredible. I mean, there's some really, really where you just see the band chemistry, you know, with Jules Rodino on drums. What a great drummer, right?
Yeah.
And you know, they're recorded well and stuff. And I love the title, The Symbol Remains. That's from Shadow of California. That's a quote from Shadow of California, right? Which is a Sandy Pearlman written song that's part of the Imagino saga. But yeah, great title. I love that, Symbol Remains. And I love the covers of these live albums. I mean, obviously this is a band with some of the best album covers, period. And whoever's doing the design on these album covers on the live albums, I think it's just look great.
Yeah, I agree. Almost all of them are just, I'm sitting looking at a few of them right now. I'm like, oh yeah, it's fantastic stuff. And I do want to touch real quick on something you mentioned before about how, because I've seen them live a few times, like in more recent years. And from like show to show, and I saw them back in the day as well, like in the early 80s, but like from show to show, it's amazing how some of these classic songs, which were much heavier on the albums, live don't come across that way. Like I saw them on the 40th anniversary tour in New York City a bunch of years ago. And I hadn't seen them in a long time. That was like the first time in a while. And I was like surprising, like how like not heavy the entire show was. There was like no guitar heft whatsoever. But then I saw them a couple of years ago and they were really heavy. So I guess it just depends, right? I don't know. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, I wonder if that has to do with you're in a bar environment. Obviously, the guys are a little older too.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric is like up there, right? I think he's mid-70s possibly.
73, like I thought he was. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So you know, so the leaders of the band are definitely a little older. Yeah, I don't know. And you know, here's something that's kind of interesting that applies to BOC. I remember a really cool quote from Scott Gorham when he was talking about Angel of Death on Thin Lizzy Renegade, right? And he's saying it's a little too heavy metal for us. We didn't like it really at first. We thought we're not a heavy metal band, we're a hard rock band. Then he just gives this description in one of my Thin Lizzy books where he says, in heavy metal, it's all about the riff. I'm paraphrasing and shortening a little, but in hard rock, it's about the song and the chorus and the vocal and all this stuff. So Blue Oyster Cult does remind me of having that healthy, standoffish attitude to heavy metal that you get with a band like Thin Lizzy and Queen and UFO and Blue Oyster Cult, where, you know, possibly they're not thinking heavy metal in their heads so much. So now when they're playing these songs that have been out for 30, 40 years, because they aren't heavy metal guys, even though they might have been heavy metal songs earlier on, their arrangement in their minds of how to play these songs is not from a heavy metal place.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I bet you if you were to ask any of the surviving members of any of those bands you mentioned, if they ever were a metal band, they would say absolutely not. Mm-hmm. But yet we can all pull out plenty of songs from throughout those catalogs and say, well, that's a metal song right there, or as close to metal as you're going to get from whatever time period it might be, 73, 76, 77, you know, that sort of thing. So absolutely.
And then what I always say about Queen is that Queen, basically they were the band that out of all of these bands who did this, said, right, you want heavy metal? We will deliver metal that is heavier than anything out there. And we're only going to do it a few times for you. So listen up, right? You get Modern Time Rock and Roll, and you get Stone Cold Crazy, and you get Sheer Heart Attack, right?
And Ogre Battle and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, Ogre Battle, exactly. So like the heavy songs from Queen, unlike the heavy songs from all these other bands we just talked about, the heavy songs from Queen are some of the heaviest songs in all of the 70s.
I agree. I mean, those first two albums are killer. We're going to go into a 20-minute Queen discussion here, and that's okay with me. But if you listen to like all of those Queen albums, on almost every single one of them, even up to the end, there's at least one or two barn burner heavy tracks on there that are really heavy. You knew Brian May had it in him. Every album he at least wanted to uncork one of those, right? So it's just, and it's amazing how really heavy they are. So absolutely. This is a topic for another show. Queen, the heavy songs, right?
Yeah. Or I do like this concept. Maybe I'll do one of my history in 5 songs on this, because I got to do one either today or tomorrow. But I do really, that's always sunk in with me, that concept of, you get some of the best heavy metal from bands who have a healthy distance from heavy metal.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And Blue Oyster Cult, perfect example. So this was fun. Hope everybody likes this deep cut dive into the discography of Blue Oyster Cult. And we didn't match any of them, almost matched one, but didn't match any. Like I said, if you guys really like this, we could probably do another episode in a couple weeks on Blue Oyster Cult if Martin is up to it, and I'm sure he will be. So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course. We're here on YouTube all the damn time. Martin, you want to plug any sites or anything like that you got going on?
Basically everything anybody books wise needs from me, you can get from martinpopoff.com. Anything that's in print is there, including these 2 Blue Oyster Cult books, which I'm out of temporarily for about another 2 weeks of both of them, but I'll be getting more. But right now I just had the new Iron Maiden book come out, Empire of the Clouds, Iron Maiden in the 2000s. That's a week old and selling a lot of those. And got the Saxon book, which is recent, the Merciful Fates back in print. So all 3 Maidens, the 2 Priests, those are all the current ones that are in print, martinpopoff.com.
Cool. Go check them out, everybody. And we'll see you tomorrow morning with another Deep Cut Dive episode and more stuff coming up this week, including a really big interview. Actually, the interview might post before you guys see this episode, so I'm not going to give anything away here. So
part of that.
So anyway, guys, take care. Have a good one, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
All right.